Welcome to the Your Message Received podcast. And now, taking your message to the finish line, your host, John Duffin.
Oh my God, that's me. Hey folks, John Duffin here from Duffin Media. Welcome back to another episode of Your Message Received. Your Message Received is the place to help you find your best, most true, authentic voice. Get what you want, find what you need, improve your results. Meet the person of your dreams, make $1 billion. We're working on those last two. We're still working on those last two, but the other ones I feel quite confident about, and we truly appreciate that you came back. And if it's your first time checking us out, great. You will find us if you're listening on iHeartMedia, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, bunch of other places, and you will also find us on YouTube. We make it easy for you to watch or listen and find and get and keep and use your most authentic voice. So we are thrilled that you're here. And the way that we get you to do all of those things, the way that we, in essence, become the accelerator is to have people that have crossed the finish line multiple times that get us there a little bit faster, a little bit smoother, a little bit cleaner. And I get that privilege today. I get to introduce somebody. Damn. So 2 weeks ago, we didn't know each other at all. Didn't know that we existed. But now, Kelly Thrush is somebody who matters to me a ton. And I'm pretty confident he's going to matter to you once you hear. But I can tell you point blank, I'm a massive fan and a friend. Kelly Thrush, welcome to the show, man.
Oh, thank you, sir. That's a heck of an introduction. I appreciate that, brother.
It is absolutely my pleasure. And folks, when you hear the journey, it'll be crazy, including the part where it's John Duffin signs up for a 30-hour consecutive run and was there at the finish line. I ain't telling you about the middle part, but we'll get to that later. But the fact of the matter is, Kelly, just to begin, is not just Lisa. So, retirement community director of sales. I know Kelly as an ultra marathon, mountain climbing, hiking, trailblazing, uber athlete, plant-based aficionado, transplant survivor, and with a spectacular story to tell, not just of survival and revival, but also mostly of the sense of appreciation and fulfillment. Hey, Kelly, I'm going to ask you right off the bat. I'm reading this article about you, and there's a quote. The article begins with a quote where you are, in essence, asking this question: how on earth did I get here? And I was asking that question when I was walking around in the blazing heat in Havre de Grace, Maryland. But I think our answers are somewhat different. I don't mean to literally throw you into the furnace right away, but I think your story is too powerful to not share.
Okay.
And my thought is, share as little or as much as you're comfortable with. I know you as some crazy fit health nut, but the fact of the matter is we've all got stories. My story includes recovery. And if it didn't, I may not know you. Well, my article, man, right? You're a young dude who had a lot going on and a lot happening. How did you get there?
Sure. Well, that specific moment, there was a few of them, but that article you're referring to was in I think that was in the Forks Over Knives article.
Yeah.
But basically, I spent a lot of hours in a hospital, for all intents and purposes, on my deathbed, and staring up at the ceiling. And you start to replay. I was only 38 at the time when I got sick. And then you mentioned transplant survivor. I was 39 when the actual surgery took place, but staring at the ceiling and replaying all of those years prior and realizing that, man, I had hopes and dreams and, a family and all of those other things. And now I'm with all of those gone at that particular moment and staring there going, how on earth did I get here? And replaying all those and to kind of echo your point, recovery. If I hadn't been in recovery, the answer is flat out, I wouldn't be here. I mean, I would not be sitting here talking to you after 4.5 months in the hospital.
So I'm wearing my Phillies jersey because I know you're a former baseball player. So that was a little bit in deference to you.
Right.
So you had athletics and a proficiency of success. So this is not a spiral downward. There was a lot of good that was going on before this point. Talk to us, in regards to even your athletic prowess.
Sure. Well, athlete, uber fit or whatever you said, athlete. That might be insulting to all the uber athletes out there too. But I do. A weekend warrior is a better fit, but
but all weekend, and we'll get to that part too. Every single bit of the weekend.
But so grew up. I played baseball since I was 4 or 5, and had a natural talent. I was pretty decent at it, and then ended up playing local junior college here. But the problem happened when I went off to college is that I figured out I was a pretty darn good beer drinker too, and that talent flourished into my 20s. After college, ended up running bars and restaurants because I was good at that too. I mean, it was fast paced. It's talking to people. It's for the most part mostly extroverts. Cash on hand, and kind of worked my way up the ranks. But as I progressed in those restaurants, my drinking career got leveled up, month by month, year by year, until finally in my 30s it had spiraled out of control. I actually, when I was in 2016, I actually didn't drink for that entire year.
Talk to me about that. We had a conversation when we had an actual conversation. I always find this fascinating when people who drink or drank or drunk, I guess that's all the tenses, that when they stop. And I love this part of the story. Describe what that's like when you know that something ain't right. And now you're going to take it. You're going to make an action move, and this is the action move. I'm just going to stop. What's it like?
Well, it was put to me by my family. It was stop or you're out kind of deal.
Just like my dad.
And that was in November 1st of 2015, and so I did. Went to a couple of AA meetings. Didn't stick. I mean, I went to probably I don't know how many, but 3 or 4 or 5. Not very many. And just kind of white knuckled it through that whole year. And notice when I talk about it now, not so much then, I don't use the word sober for 2016 because I was not. I didn't drink. That was for sure. I mean, I didn't have a drop, but I was not sober. Not in the true definition of the word that I think about it now. And so after about a year, a little over a year, probably 13 months, those thoughts crept into my head was like, look at that. I did this for a whole year. Holy cow. I am cured.
Right.
I can drink like a normal person. Let me go out and prove it. And I did actually for the first day that I finally decided I'm going to go test this theory of mine. I did fine. I had 2 drinks and just like a normal person. And that was it. And then it was probably the same for the next, call it, week or so. And then just like the rest of us are in well, I can't say the rest of us, like the majority of us in recovery, one drink led to more and more and more until finally a month later, I was worse than I was prior to when I was in 2015 when I stopped. I mean, it was my morning routine. I talked about this on one of my posts a while back. My morning routine in 2015 was I would get up in the morning at about 6 or so, but I won't get too graphic, but I had to run to the bathroom and puke up bile, and then get myself to the local convenience store down the road, just to level out for the day. Just get rid of the shakes, kind of level out and go about my day. That was, what's that now? 7 years ago or so.
Right. But so you're like mid-30s, if I'm doing my
math right here. Yeah, mid-30s, probably 36 at that point, 35, 36, something along those lines. And, at that point too, I had bounced, when I was 35 or 36, I had bounced from job to job. I mean, I did well in my 20s and into my early 30s, but as the addiction got worse and worse, so did my performance with my family. So did my performance at work, my relationships. I mean, it's the same old story that you hear about. You start to retreat and push away all of those people and all those functions that are close to you. Because they interfere with your drinking time. I mean, I can't tell them what's going on. I get to do this on my own. Like, if I told them what was actually happening, they would have said, Kelly, you have a problem.
And then you would have been expected to say, oh, okay, and now I'll do something about it.
Right, exactly.
You know, I mean, that's what a lot of people tend to do. And I find you admirable for a million reasons, but one of them is that you had a propensity of success. So this is not a miserable, awful life. There's some athletic success, as you said, professional success. So you're rising up through the ranks, and things are I don't know if to say relatively easy, but you're moving, right?
Sure.
You're moving, and things are well. You talked about earlier where you were saying the fact that in terms of communicating and, you know, and being able to like chat up people, were you always able to do that? Did that come naturally for you?
I think so. I mean, you know, people have always been kind of my forte, so to speak. You know, when you know, whether it's in a public setting or, I mean, I've been managing people since I was 20 years old, probably.
Right.
When I first
so people actually mattered to you because you felt like they need. I gotcha. Okay.
Absolutely. So, but yeah, but I wouldn't let them in on my, you know, my dirty little secret, because then there's judgment, and then there's, you have to stop and you have to make a change. And I wasn't willing to do that. I mean, that's really how I got myself in a mess, you know, back at this point, it's 2017. After that year of sobriety, and then my, you know, a year of not drinking, excuse me. And then back, see, I had to slip there. And then
you actually went a whole year though. I did.
Yeah, I did a whole year.
I was just miserable. I think I referred it to you very proper English. It's like the feeling of having a broomstick shoved into my rear end.
Right.
When I was with other people, because I was being cheated and deprived and you weren't, and why were you picking on me?
Right.
So you, in essence, make the call on your own. I'm not going to do it. I get through a year. Yay for me.
Right. And I can prove to everybody that, no, I can drink like a normal person. I'm a grown ass man. I can do what I want. You know, you can't tell me that I'm not allowed to do this. And being somebody that's fairly stubborn, at least that's what I'm told. You know, I can muscle my way through this and be just fine, which is not the case. I mean, I know that now, but back then that's what I was thinking. So 2017, in the midst of me coming back to drinking at the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, my marriage fell apart as a result of it. I mean, plain and simple, it was my fault that the whole thing kind of went in shambles. And that sent me spiraling down the wrong end of a bottle, you know, out of the house, damn near homeless at that point. I mean, my grandmother actually lived with us at the time, and thank goodness she still had her old house prior to, so the two of us actually went there. And then I was unchecked. You know, it was just me, and I was serving tables at the time. I'd really been out of my general manager role for a couple of years then at that point, and really just spiraled. Looking back, there were signs that I was getting sick, you know, in hindsight now, but I ignored them because I wasn't going to go to the doctor. I knew what the doctor was going to tell me. You know, the doctor is going to say, you're drinking yourself to death and you need to make a change. And I wasn't willing to do that. And so in January of 2018, it was actually January 7th. It was a Sunday. And I was moving furniture for a buddy of ours. And I didn't feel good. You know, I didn't feel well. And then Monday I felt a little worse. Tuesday I actually was at work, and I was managing a restaurant here where I work at now. I was managing the dining room. Right. And one of my servers, tongue in cheek, but she came up to me and said, "Hey, Kelly, are you dying?" And I looked at her like, "What? No, I'm not. No, I'm not dying. Get out of here. Get back to work." You know, and kind of dismissed it. The very next day, on Wednesday, the 10th, my boss, who is still currently my boss, my supervisor, she came up to me and basically laid out some choices for me. She looked at me, you know, plain as day, and said, "Kelly, you're going to the hospital." And I looked at her and said, "What? You're crazy. I have." Are you a mind reader? Yeah. Well, right. Well, that's how bad I looked. I was in denial. I didn't know that I looked that bad. But she gave me some options of either go to the hospital or she calls 911 for me, and that was it. And so I kind of just, slumped my shoulders and said, oh boy, I look that bad, huh? And so then, being as stubborn as I am, I still didn't drive myself to the hospital. I drove myself to the urgent care down by my house. And the doctor took one look at me and said, what are you doing here? There's nothing I can do here. You need to go to a hospital.
So Kelly, this sounds so crass, but it's like right off the bat, it's like, so you had described that they were seeing, amongst a lot of things, they were seeing jaundice.
Correct. Yep.
Right.
I was yellow. My eyes were yellow. My skin was yellow. Yep.
But you don't see it.
Nope. I thought I looked like crap, but
Yeah.
I didn't see the jaundice. I was, like I said, it was straight denial. It was you see what you want to see.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I didn't feel well, but no, it'll pass. I'm either sick with the flu or I'm hungover or whatever it is. This is not a big deal.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You told me this, and I remember I had an aunt. She's since passed away. She's not the only person that I ever encountered that had jaundice, but I can remember it was an absolute shock out of my mind when I saw her with jaundice. I'll never forget the visual. I can recall my Aunt Helen, my mom's sister, God, good person. And I'm upstairs. I'm living at home. And my aunt came over to our house, my mom's house. And I remember, I knew she was sick. We all knew that. But I can remember, I can hear my aunt talking. And I'm thinking, oh, well, she sounds okay. This is all right. I should be able to handle it. And we have been coached, like by mom, she's really sick. But I'm like, oh, she sounds cool. So I go literally running down the stairs to say hi to her. And I swear to God, I'll never forget this. I don't make it all the way to the bottom of the steps. And I literally just stop on a dime and was like,
right.
And why I'm bringing that up was it was so visually apparent that something not only was wrong, it was acutely, like irreversibly wrong. So I'm thinking of the urgent care doctor. I'm thinking of your boss. I'm thinking the people that are saying this. And then I'm thinking of the pushback from you.
Sure. Absolutely.
And, is it because, I wonder that one of the things I'm curious about was, look, you managed people in your 20s, taking care of people, including your grandmother, although parents and grandparents, although there was a mutual benefit there, at least in that case, right? But between that, the thing that I wondered was, to a certain point, everyone else mattered. But did you matter to you?
Looking back, the answer is no.
Okay.
Looking back, now at the time, I would have just dismissed it as, no, I'm fine. Like I can muscle my way through this. One of my favorite phrases. I can will my way, to being healthy or to the finish line. Because I've done it in most aspects of my life. It's whether it's work or sports or whatever. You not being terribly athletically talented. And we'll kind of dive into the ultra running, which is why that sport draws me to it, is that I'm not very fast, but I can just not
we'll get there, brother. We'll get there.
Yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, so looking back, no, I didn't matter because I didn't go to do checkups. I didn't go to the doctor because I also knew if I was honest with them, they're going to tell me to stop, and I wasn't willing to do it. No matter what was presented in front of me, it just wasn't an option. Like, no, that's not going to happen.
When was the first time you actually decided, you know what, I'm going to at least consider that this is a problem?
Honestly,
the physical. I don't even mean the alcoholism. I mean the physical health. When it's like, you know what, let me at least broach the subject.
Well, I think it was probably about 3 or 4 weeks into my hospital stay, because I was still fighting. Like I had to get back to work. I have to get back to my daily routine. When am I going to get out of here? Can't you just give me some pills and send me home? Whatever the solutions were, and they wouldn't let me out of the hospital. They did a couple of times. They would send me home. They would discharge me, but I was back within 24 hours because I couldn't sustain any sort of health without IV drips and,
Okay.
all the different things that they fed me during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so finally there was a moment, probably 3 weeks, I'm going to guess, I don't know the exact day,
Mm-hmm.
but where I finally released and let go and said, all right, these guys are just going to have to help me. It was after long conversations with Jamie, my wife, now my current wife, and we haven't even brought her up yet because she is the reason I'm alive today. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. She is the reason. So, but we're talking long about with her, and she's worried sick about me, and I'm still fighting this, going, no, I'll be all right. I'll be fine. No big deal. Until finally, after realizing that they're not going to let me out of this hospital, because the terminology of, you get your affairs in order. You have a month or two, and that's about it. When I finally let go and said, all right, I'm putting my life quite literally in these people's hands, all the different teams and doctors that were out there, and it was up to them.
Buddy, was it you or Jamie that cast the vote that you paid attention to? Do you remember?
It was her that finally got through to me. You know what I mean? After long conversations about, how things are going, and I'm a pretty positive and optimistic dude anyway. But dismissing the whole, no, I'm going to be fine. This is just going to pass. It's I'm sick, but it's not that big a deal, until finally she drilled it through me like, no, this is life or death. That it took a lot of her beating into me, for me to actually realize that, yeah, that was the case.
So what do you think it is? And I can't wait, because I had the pleasure of meeting Jamie. So I met Jamie before I knew Kelly. I mean, we're talking minutes, not days and weeks. But the fact of the matter is, so what was it about Kelly that you think was able to crack this code, crack the armor or veneer?
Wow, that's a good. I don't know. I think it was, I had an advocate for me, that I didn't have other places. My mom was a good advocate for me, but at this point in my life, I had ruined just about every relationship that I had out there. And so I didn't have anyone like her that was fighting for me. She tells the story of, she would come to the hospital on her lunch breaks and wouldn't come visit me. She'd go visit with the doctors and talk about what we need to do next. And she would advocate for me, especially in the beginning when there were multiple doctors that said that there's nothing they could do for me. And so she would plead my case, especially to a couple of doctors there at the University Medical Center here, and plead my case to them. And she did that, without any fanfare, without me asking. She just did it. And so I think having her in my corner and fighting for me, and then telling me this is what we have to do to get it done to keep you alive, and not alive for a few more years, not alive till, you're 60 or 70, alive to see, the summer. It took a bit from her. That's for sure.
Hey, we've got Kyle Crane navigating the boards here for this episode. And if we can get the photo up momentarily, not this second, but momentarily. So I want to show this photo only in the sense of, this is what you are heading towards. Thank you, Kyle. So this is what you're heading towards. And forgive me, Jamie, much respect to you. Kelly is a hot-looking dude. That is probably the first reason I gravitated to him. Justin Timberlake is the second, but I digress. But the fact is, this is you in 2016, 2015, 2016.
Nope. So the picture on the left with me at the hospital is about a day and a half after my transplant. It was shortly after I woke up. After my
Walk me back before then. Thank you. I jumped ahead. And Kyle, thanks for putting that up. I jumped ahead, and I didn't mean to do that, but that's okay. It's like you're being told to get your affairs in order, right?
Yep.
And now it's like, okay, the only way out is through a transplant.
Yep, absolutely. And so with transplants, there's one of the hard things about transplants and for the transplant team is that the recipient has to be the right amount of sick. There's a sweet spot.
Right.
And so if you're not sick enough, then you can wait because there's somebody else who needs that organ more than you do at the particular moment. If you're too sick, well, then shoot, you may not survive the surgery. So we need to pick somebody else. So that was the first thing, because I was on the too sick side of that spectrum. So the other problem that I had was prior to going to the hospital, I was not sober. I mean, I spent the first week in the hospital detoxing. There was hallucinations. This is what's been relayed to me. My version of what I remember is different than the actual truth. But I was detoxing that first week. Right. And so, the transplant team didn't want to give me a brand new liver if all I'm going to go do is ruin it as soon as I'm out of the hospital. So with Jamie and all of her advocating and convincing these two doctors, they made a deal with me in late February of 2018 now at this point. So I've been in the hospital for 6 weeks and said, basically, if we can go through with this, if we can actually get you on the transplant list, if we can find you a liver in time, you're going to have to do all of these prerequisites that most transplant recipients have to go through. You're going to have to do them post. And I had to sign an agreement for it. Where I had to go to a year's worth of, we call it smart recovery. So I've described, I think you and I talked about it for sure.
But would you mind describing it just for the benefit of the hearing?
So smart recovery is very similar to AA. Very different vehicles to get this to the same destination of sobriety. So we don't do 12 steps. We don't have sponsors, things of that nature. But we do things with cognitive behavioral therapy. So we have worksheets and we have workbooks and there's groups that we go to each week. And we kind of interact and have those types of things. But the message on both things or on both sides are it's the same.
And it's active. And it's active and it's collaborative is not the word I want. It's everybody's individual journey, but other people are involved, not just you.
For sure. It's a community for sure. It's a fellowship. Absolutely. Because and this particular SMART group was specific towards transplant patients. And it was for transplant patients that had some sort of a substance abuse problem, whether it was affecting your liver, your kidneys, pancreas, whatever it was that it was affecting, but it was very specific to that. And so after transplant, once I was well enough, I started attending these meetings. And for the long time, for actually the majority of it, I would say 90-something% of the time, I was the only post-transplant recipient that was at these meetings.
And
most everybody was the year before.
So here's the question: before you have the transplant, you signed a paperwork saying, "I promise I'm not gonna." How many times? Over under is 1 million. How many times did you promise before? I will never ever. I'll put it in writing if you need me to.
For sure. It was
over
1 million. Yeah, it was.
Did you believe it when you were signing it?
Absolutely. Well, so when I signed it, I don't know if I believed it 100%, to be honest with you. And this, of course, this is the pre-transplant.
Yeah.
Probably a month, well, not even a month, a few weeks before anyway. Looking back, if I'm being honest with myself, I don't know if I 100% believed it because, forever is a long time. Mine was, well, I know I need this transplant. I know I need to sign this in order to get there. So give me the piece of paper. Because this is now quite literally, it's been beaten into me enough that if this doesn't happen, I'm not going to be here in a month. And
now it matters.
Oh, sure. Now there's stakes involved. Absolutely.
Yep. See, there's other people, Jamie. There's I said there, and you are now buying in, and that's the sort of thing. And by the way, I love that you said that. I think about it. Look, if anybody is talking about long-range plans, whether it's sobriety or a lot of things, I recoil. I couldn't. I absolutely couldn't. But you're like, okay, I have never been in this position before, so I'm at least willing to, in essence, give it a go. And yours is more extreme than most.
Sure.
So you get access and you get the transplant. So, man, walk me through. We just saw the picture. Kyle, would you mind putting that picture up one more time? Boom. So now, as you just said to me, this is a day or so outside of the transplant.
Yep.
You know what I noticed, which is weird about this? I know that like there's shock value and all that sort of thing. What I love about this is the smile on your face.
So Jamie tells a story that was, I think, is pretty indicative to my personality.
Right.
The whole, don't worry about it, I got this, I'll handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are, I'm being wheeled now into the operating room. I have just spent, at this particular moment in the journey, I have just spent the last, be honest with you, I don't know how many hours. I'm going to say between 6 and 10 something hours in the ICU, in and out of consciousness, basically bleeding out. I was bleeding out of my nose and out of my mouth and so forth and so on. And as I'm wheeling out of the ICU and into the OR, Jamie's right there, and she kind of grabs my hand, and I'm already hooked up to all the different machines, and I kind of leaned over. I gave her that little shit-eating grin, and I winked at her, like, "Yep, I got this. Don't worry about it. We're good." Of course, I mean, realistically, going into the surgery I was going into, I mean, it wasn't guaranteed that I was making it off the table. Because prior to surgery, I had 20 something. I think the number was 27 blood transfusions, 27 units of blood prior to surgery. And I had 40 something overall, like 45.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Question right off the bat. Now, you talk about in another article, you literally talked about the first 10 seconds after waking up. Do you remember them?
Absolutely. That was what those 10 seconds have defined the rest of my life since that moment. So, coming to, so it would have been shortly before this picture that's up, coming out of surgery, when I finally woke up, I'm still hooked up to the ventilator. So, you got this big tube down your throat, but my family is there now. And if you recall, I mean, my relationship again was not the greatest, but all of them are there, or the majority of them anyway. Everyone who could be there was there.
Right.
I got Jamie on one side and my sister, who had flown all the way down from Colorado, is on the other, and they're holding my hand, and I am just overwhelmed with gratitude. And the way I have learned how to describe it that I think is fitting is that I was the essence of that word. It's other than that, it is indescribable. I mean, I was so thankful for making it to the other side, for the doctors that saved my life, for my family who's here now with me. Wrapped in that gratitude, or wrapped around that gratitude, is guilt. I mean, it was
sure.
I had put myself in this situation. I had put my family in this situation. Going back to laying in the hospital bed, thinking about how did I end up here?
Yes.
All those aspirations of Major League Baseball player or President of the United States or whatever it was that I fantasized when I was a teenager, have led me to that particular moment. And it was a life defining, not a life changing, a life defining moment wrapped in there. And so I use that moment now to keep myself grounded. So, and when real life takes over, whether it's at work or relationships or some dude cut you off on the freeway, I go back to that particular moment and go, man, just remember those 10 seconds and how you felt, and put myself back in that bed. Absolutely. I do it. I can't say every day, but it's multiple times a week.
That's a lot.
And it keeps you grounded. It's, when you see something that, gives you some sort of an emotional response, I go back to that moment and really try to relive it. And that way it makes you appreciate little things that are out there. Like, I'll tell you what, you put up on one of your stories here, I don't know, 3 or 4 days ago,
right?
Put something that tell me something that you're thankful for.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And so that is a practice of mine I do every day. I do a gratitude practice every day. almost without fail. I can't say it's, 100%, but it's pretty darn close. But what I do in my gratitude practice is I try to be very, very specific, because it's very easy. When you go around the Thanksgiving table, everybody says, "What are you thankful for?" I'm thankful for my health. I'm thankful for my family.
I love my mom. And then you start naming all the names of the people at the table, maybe one or two that, aren't there.
Yep. And that, what happened that particular moment or that particular day, that morning, there was a bright red cardinal that had flown by and landed on a perch 3 or 4 feet from me. And paused for a moment. He just kind of sat there and looked at me, and then went on his day doing whatever he was doing. But that particular moment, man, it was awesome. I'm the only one that got to experience that. Nobody else in the history of the world ever got that particular moment. And had I not been through that 10 seconds after my surgery, neither would I.
See, and the fact that you're still able to draw on this is spectacular. But I want you to take a minute or two. I love this is my favorite part of all of this is then it's the steps to redemption, we'll call it, right? Yep. So look, it couldn't have been, you've described this in terms of needing the 24-hour care when this is first done, the inability to walk. Was there anything in terms of as you're going through the process, not that's memorable, because all of that would be memorable, but in terms of something that felt good as you're trying to literally navigate the basics on your own, walk, but that stuff.
Sure. I mean, there was lots of them, and there was little milestones that I used all the time, and it was, I think it comes from, that athletic background where you take that one victory. I was a pitcher, and one of the frames of mind was you want to throw strike one, and then you want to repeat that, 3 times in a row, or 3 times like that. Yeah. So it's those little things in front of you. So my goal, learning how to walk again, was to get to the mailbox and back. So picture me in my, because I was this big around with fluid, and so picture me walking with house shoes and shuffling with a walker. Oof. Out to the mailbox in 105-degree Arizona heat as I'm shuffling with these oversized shorts that I was basketball shorts. I was wearing. But that was a victory. The very first time I took a shower all by myself with no help, standing up, was a big day. Now I was wobbly and I held on. So the tile in your shower has that about a 1/4-inch lip. So I was holding on with my fingertips,
and you found it.
Yeah, I found it, and I was holding on. But that was the best shower I've ever taken in my life. And because I did it all by myself. My favorite story that I tell of those is, and I think I shared this one with you, but we were, 6 weeks after surgery. I'm still walking pretty gingerly, usually with a walker for short distances, and then wheelchairs for longer ones. But we had taken our youngest son, Jamie's son, out for pictures to a national park or state park anyway, here around my house, and we were going to do 8th grade graduating pictures. And so we took pictures. Okay, great. And it had been so getting down to the entrance of this park, there's a long, handicap accessible ramp that kind of weaves around all the way down.
Sure.
The parking lot's kind of raised above it.
Yep.
And so I walked down, we take our pictures. It's been a couple hours now. And I look at James and I said, I'm pretty tired. We need to head home. So we start walking home. And as we get to the fork in the road, to the left is this ramp that I can walk and meander all the way back up. But to the right are these steps. And there's like 17 of them or something like that. I counted them at the time. I think it was 17. And I don't say anything to her. I just kind of look at the steps. And then I look at the ramp. And I look at the steps and I look at the ramp, and I do that a couple of times. And then I look at Jamie, and Jamie looks at me and she goes, "Oh, please don't." And so I said, "No, I'm going to take the steps." She goes, "No, we can take the ramp." And so her and I bantered back and forth for a bit until finally I looked at her and said, "I'm going to take the steps, and I'm not going to use the handrail." And she finally conceded. Yeah, she conceded. She looked at me and went, "Okay, he's going." Right. So I did. I walked up all steps without the handrail. And I made it all the way to the top, and it was like I won the Olympics. I yelled out this yell of "woo" at the top, high five to stranger, in this very quiet and serene and peaceful place that I am now screaming at the top of my lungs.
And so, you've won the Super Bowl, babe.
Yeah,
in your mind, you've won. See, that to me is spectacular, because you wonder, like, what is the impetus that propels you to make more seismic changes? And
sure.
It's something like the way that feels. Bob, I know that, like, basically and I have to, because it's a part of you, and it's very slowly, at least, re-enters a part of me, is the parts that you change your diet, and now you become plant-based.
Yep.
Was that, I mean, you went through a lot of hard. So asking you, was that hard, is a dumb question. But what I mean is, in the sense that, was the adjustment in terms of that, was it substantial? Did you take a while, or did you just nail this in the beginning?
No, well, nailed it, no, but I did dive in. I mean, I jumped in feet first, and didn't hold on.
Please tell me the part where you're having the conversation with Jamie in regards to the decision, we'll call it.
So I have a tendency to tell Jamie, like, when I have these crazy ideas, whether it's plant-based, or I'm going to, ride the Tour de Tucson, I'm going to do a 100-mile bike ride.
Yep.
With zero training, and I decided to do these things, and so I have been thinking about it for quite some time, and I've worked out logistics mentally. I just haven't spoken the words out loud. And so apparently my cue to her is, I'll say, so James, I've been thinking, and now she knows that's what it is. So as soon as I say that, now she looks at me and goes, "Oh God, what is it?
Oh God,
but great. Here we go. What next?" So anyway, so that particular day we were out to dinner, and I said, I'm going to go ahead and I said, James, I've been thinking. And she goes, oh yeah, what's that? And I said, I think I'm going to go vegan. And she kind of looked at me and she went, oh, because we had done zero talking about this before. And she was, okay, well, when do you want to do this? And I said, well, right now, like, I'm going to order an Impossible Burger, and we're going to start today. And then tomorrow I'll go to the store and pick up what do I have to pick up. So it was all in from the very beginning. Now, with that being said, yes, there were bumps, there was trials. I went to the dietitian through the transplant team to make sure I, did it right. Now, granted, that appointment was a few weeks down the road, but so yeah, there were some hiccups along the way and some figuring out I had to do, but it was a jump, and we'll figure the rest out later, which tends to be my MO.
And so is it? I know that, like I said, I'm in talking to you and in the reading, you're now, in essence, finding people that have similarities to you, whether it's through the books. And I'll say our collectively hero, Charlie Engle. Sure. God bless him. If you're listening, and I hope you are, none of this is happening, this conversation, none of this stuff, if it's not for Charlie Engle. But you grab his book. Yeah. And it's like crazy how these things, and Rich Roll you've told me about as well too, in terms of this. So you, even though you're saying, hey, James, I think I'll, blah, 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 you said a minute ago, and this bears also in it, you've already taken steps in all these things. You do your homework clearly. You take the time and research from either Rich Roll or Charlie at that point. What grabbed you to be like, oh, they're doing it, this is cool, I'll just go follow them?
Well, I think that the catalyst for all of it was I got turned on to Charlie's book, The Running Man, and so when I read that book in
God Almighty, right,
a day and a half. I mean, it was actually, I guess, it's a funny story, I can tell now. But so Jamie, we were actually traveling, and we were up in Colorado visiting my sister, and I picked up his book to read on the airplane. And so I'm, frantically turning pages and going through it. Jamie actually got sick on that trip. And so we were at my sister's house. She's up all night, with stomach issues, and I'm kind of literally holding her hair back. And so there was one moment we're in the bathroom and she's not feeling well, and she's apologizing to me like, oh my gosh, Kelly, it's 2:00 in the morning. And I've got my book in hand going, no, it's all right, James, I'm good. You let me know when you need me, because I'm turning the pages. So anyway,
I love
what it really made me do was when I read Charlie's book and decided I wanted to, and among many others, but his was the first. And so decided I was going to run 100 miles one day. And as I read all of these people's books who do those types of endurance events, there's a lot of them are plant-based. And so then I started looking at my diet and, and it was a typical American diet, and really started to dive into what my nutrition looked like. And I realized, like, man, it's not very healthy what I do, even though I think that it is. There's processed foods and there's sugar and there's all the different things that go into it. And it really wasn't terribly healthy. So that was kind of the process of the whole thing. Was I looked at somebody like Charlie who can run across the Sahara Desert, which I cannot do. And then I look at somebody like Rich Roll, who did the 5 Ultramans out in Hawaii in 5 days or within a week. I look at all these different athletes who do all these crazy feats, and there's a common theme amongst a bunch of them is they're plant-based. And really pay attention. They're very intentional about what they put inside their body as fuel. And so I started doing research. I started listening to podcasts and reading and so forth and so on, and realized that this is something that I want to do. And that was 2 years ago now, and I haven't looked back.
You gave me a suggestion, and I think it bears repeating because I actually did it. You talked about, to me, finding your third favorite thing and eliminating that in terms of starting the process. Because I know for me now, so I did it for about, I said 6 months. It probably was 4 months several years ago. And I loved it because I'm getting food sent to my house and I'm just basically eating the food. And then that delivery service goes out of business. And it was based on Forks Over Knives. I mean, it was they're gone. I don't bother to do any more research, and I'm surely not going to be the one making the food. And out I go. I start to pick all this up again. I'm talking to you. I'm picking up the Joel Fuhrman book, and I've now going back to, RIP and all that stuff. And it just felt crazy overwhelming. For these few days. Crazy overwhelming. So the suggestion you made to me, which I absolutely loved to death, would you explain the third favorite thing?
Sure. So it's something that I thought about, because you want to set yourself up for success. And again, it goes like with anything, sobriety, you can't think about the whole, because it is overwhelming. That's very daunting. Because
the rest of your life sounds insane.
Yeah. And people think about all the things that I have to eliminate if I go plant-based, which really... personally, I think about all the things you now get to include, but anyhow, that's further down the road. So what I tell folks, especially when they're overwhelmed, I said, all right, well, let's make it simple. Set yourself a goal that's extremely attainable. So I tell them, pick your third favorite thing that's on those things that you have to eliminate. And I always use bacon as my example. So if bacon is your favorite thing, and I cannot live without bacon, well, then that's not the one. Okay, right. Maybe it's hamburgers. So yeah, bacon's your first favorite thing, and then cheese, because I get cheese a lot when I talk. I can't give up cheese. Cheese is their second favorite thing, but hamburgers they eat a couple of times a week. And I'll say, all right, well, for a month, and you have to commit to it and be honest with yourself, because I mean it's you and you, right. But just cut out hamburgers for a month, and then at the end of 30 days, look at it and go, did you miss them? Because chances are you probably didn't. Maybe you did that first time that you normally have Thursdays, you always get the bacon cheeseburger or whatever it is. And this time you got
the way that we grew up in Northeast Philly.
Right.
Right.
But that first time, maybe you missed it. But by the end of the month, I'm going to guess you probably got through it pretty okay. So then if it did, and you want to continue and you want to expand, or maybe you just do it for a second month. But if you want to expand, all right, now pick. All right, so instead of cheese, which is a very broad category, I'm going to cut out cheese for dinner. I'm allowed to have cheese for lunch. I'm assuming you wouldn't have much cheese for breakfast, but maybe you do.
Cheese omelets?
There you go. Omelets, for sure. For sure. Blintzes. I mean, there's lots. Cream cheese on bagels. I mean, I suppose there's a lot. Right. So, but yeah, so you cut out, just those one things if you want to expand, and then you build upon it from there. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's what's going to work for you. And I'm a firm believer in, if you're going to start something that seems incredibly difficult, when you're beginning, do something that you can successfully do. and because you'll start to build that habit. You'll feel good because look at this. I cut out hamburgers for an entire month. Well, the fact of the matter is you eat them once a week. That was 4 different meals that you actually did it for. So really, I mean, it wasn't that big a deal if you look at it mathematically.
Right.
But at the end of the month, I mean, it's 30 days without your favorite food or your favorite sandwich, or third favorite. And you can build upon that success until pretty soon. All right, well, I've done 3 months. I got rid of cheese. I got rid of my hamburgers. All right, I'm going to tackle bacon. And then off you go for bacon. And then by the end of those, 4 months, I guess, at this particular example, man, you're damn near plant-based already.
Right. I want to talk about you just literally rattled off a few minutes ago when you're like, I'm going to start with 100-mile. And I think the part that's the coolest to me and the craziest is the matter-of-factness of the way that you say that. And now knowing you a little bit, it's like, it is matter of fact. So you talk about the feeling better and all that sort of thing. You know what? One of the things that really pops to me in terms of what you say specifically, it's not just the endurance and what the Charlies are able to accomplish. You talk about sleep. And for somebody that sleeps pretty wonky, it's like that's kind of like the dog whistle. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, oh, how's that changed for you?
Oh, I sleep great.
That's what I mean, right?
I sleep great. There's a lot of different factors to it, but I absolutely believe that your nutrition and what you eat will affect your sleep. So I have, whether it's a Whoop or a Garmin, but I have wearables, and I can tell based off my resting heart rate when I'm asleep. If it's a whole food plant-based diet and you have to string together about 2 or 3 days, well, there's no variation from it's whole foods and plant-based. My resting heart rate's in the mid 40s. If I deviate from that and have some processed food in there, it'll jump to the low or mid 50s just by what I put in my body. Yep.
See, that to me, folks, would just be that alone would to me be the reason that I continue and at least begin as I've done with the third. And by the way, I raised my hand like I'm in 4th grade. And you say it is hamburgers. It is burgers. That was the number 3. Processed cold cuts.
Oh, there you
go. Number one lately. Processed cold cuts, cheese, burgers. And so that's where it began in this regard. But I want to now come to, in essence, what you're doing. And to me, this is such a spectacular series of events, of the stuff that you pull off in terms of challenging yourself. And folks, last weekend, depending on when you're listening and watching this as well, too, we'll say a couple of weeks ago in Havre de Grace, Maryland, I meet Kelly and I meet Jamie through an event that Charlie Engle has his name literally on. And Charlie celebrates 30 years of sobriety by committing to move his body for 30 consecutive hours. Running, but also it included yoga and stretching and walking and whatever the case may be. And I swear to God, now I know because I was there, that was put into place for yahoos like me. So it wouldn't scare people to death to think that they're... So you show up with the intention of, I'm going to do this for 30 consecutive hours.
Yep.
Is this one of these, James, I think I'm gonna?
Actually, in this particular instance, this was her. She gave me permission out of the get-go. I mean, out of the gate. Now, granted, this has been 2 years of building to this moment, but Charlie and I had never met. We had communicated via email three times over the last few years, or a couple of years. And he reached out to me back in, I think, March, and started talking about the Penguin, which was the title of last week's or a couple weeks back, the movement for recovery. And he reached out to me and said, "Hey, Kelly, I want you to be a part of it in some way, whether it was in person or virtual or whatever it might be." And so I came home after Charlie and I had spoken on the phone. I came home and told Jamie about it. And she basically looked at me and said, well, looks like we're going to Maryland. I mean, she knew, she had a better idea, I think, of what that event was going to be than I did. And she was all about it. And thank goodness, because that, I put it in one of my posts, and I think is the best way to describe it, is that weekend was nothing short of life-changing for me. And I think for a lot of us there, because, I mean, you can attest to it, we're still all chatting with each other. We're texting, or we're commenting on an Instagram post, or we're all putting up our different pictures, and we're interacting. And it's a week and a half later, and we're still doing it.
Feeling the need, for at least from my vantage point, feeling the need to do so, the desire to do so, and the joy and rush of getting the exchange and having the continuous communication. Oh my God, there's more pictures. Oh, look, so and so, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
I want you to try. It's hard for me to say why, simply because I just have a hard time articulating. Sure. Can you try to articulate why it was life-changing for you?
I think it was absolutely the people that I met. And they were genuine, they were gracious, they were accommodating. I mean, everybody from the folks that ran the event, to
Greg and Alex, and there's
awesome.
20 other people, right?
Yeah. Yep. And then the people like Sam Pruitt, who was playing race director that particular day, who's running around trying to find an ice bath for my feet because they were wrecked. You know, and to the actual runners, to the people, you know, whether it's, you know, I mean, yourself or Luke or Josh or
Hillary or right,
put up 90 miles,
right?
Oh my God, the list goes on and on and on and on
yep.
and on. And there was, at least in that brief moment, there was true connection there. And Josh and I actually talked about it for a bit, that, you know, you commemorate that in that misery of trying to move for 30 hours, your feet are sore, your legs are sore. It was hot that weekend.
Stupid hot.
Yeah. And so, and we're all out there in it together, which was amazing. And the whole purpose of this event, not only was it for Charlie's sobriety, because that was the, you know.
Well, that was the hook.
Yeah, that was the hook. But really, we were there for something bigger than ourselves. I mean, the whole point was to raise money for addiction research. You know, and so you're doing this for something bigger than yourself, which is really what I treat most of the things that I do nowadays. That's my perspective on my life, whether it's these, you know, whether it's plant-based and being able to talk about it with folks that are curious. You know, I try not to be preachy. I suppose I have my moments, but usually I'll wait for someone to ask me, or if it's doing, you know, like this morning, you know, running, you know, we went and ran about 5.5 miles this morning, and all I did was put it out there, or actually my friend of mine put it out there, but we had a group thread and said, hey, we're going to go run tomorrow morning. Who wants to go with us? And then, you know, pretty soon that turns into 3, 4, 5 of us, and we all start going. Or if it's through the you know, the sober and the recovery community that I try to help, or the transplant community that I try to help. And it's just simply the enthusiasm and the joy of it, and realizing that this is bigger than me, and I owe it to everybody in my life that I can have a positive change on everybody else, or as many people else as I can. So
I loved when you shared with me during the multiple times, hey, my mission now is to help as many people as I can. And I love that, especially because it seems to be true. Sure. Now, you are participating in, to me, I would have thought that, oh, by the way, folks, Kelly did finish the 30 hours. Charlie did finish the 30 hours. I cannot confirm or deny that, as I said, and Jamie was a witness, in fact, that I literally said to one of the organizers, the under-over was 5. The question was me asking, will I have access to my car? Will I be able to come and go freely? Will I get locked into this? And the answer was, nope, you'll have access to your car. I disappeared for, let's say, I don't know, 10 hours at least. It would have been longer if I could have actually gotten up and walked away. But a bunch of people finished strong. And now, as if you've got nothing else to do or prove, you're running something called, or hiking, or all of the above, the rim to rim hike for the Launchpad Teen Center.
Yep.
Please, God, and folks, we're talking the Grand Canyon. Please describe.
For sure. So this is a fundraiser I've been a part of now for about, this is my third year.
Right.
Here in Arizona, there's a local teen center. It's called the Launchpad. And it helps at-risk or underprivileged teens in multiple different ways. I'm directly involved in the outdoors program, and our group is, because hiking and being outdoors is one of my passions. And so we raise money for that program to get these teens who probably or maybe wouldn't have an opportunity to go camping or to go whitewater rafting or all of those different things, rock climbing, whatever it might be. I mean, they get to do all scholarship based, so they don't have to pay for equipment or travel or any of those expenses, but they get to share these experiences with them to get them outdoors, off of their phones, out of their, off their computers or whatever they're
off their backside,
whatever kids these days are doing. But it gets them outside.
Yep.
And so the Launchpad put together a few years back, it's called the Trek for Teens, and that's what I'm directly involved with. And so the last 2 years has been a rim to rim. So we would start at the north rim of the Grand Canyon, and in one day we'd hike all the way back across to the south rim, which in that case, it turns out to be about 24, 25 miles.
Good Lord.
Depending on where you start. And you go all the way down, all the way across, and then all the way back up. Which sounds very like a great idea and very romantic until you're 20 miles into this thing and you look straight up at that canyon wall going, this was a really bad idea.
The same one that they take all the pictures of.
Correct. Yeah, that's the one. The big hole in northern Arizona.
Good Lord.
And so this year there's a couple of us that have upped the ante a little bit. And we're going to do rim to rim to rim. So we're going to start at the south rim. We're going to go all the way across to the north. We're going to meet with our group who's already camping up there. We'll have a little bit of dinner, and then we'll come on back across the way. So it'll end up being closer to 50 miles, give or take, again, depending on where we start from. But it'll be about 50 miles with about 12,000 feet of elevation gain, all of which are in, the two canyon walls on either side. And it's going to be fantastic. I mean, the first time that I made that hike, it was, oh my gosh, it was just mind-blowing experience when you're hiking through that canyon. It is the only way to see that canyon. Seeing it from the top is absolutely gorgeous, and it's mesmerizing. It is that times 10 when you're hiking all the way through it. I mean, it truly is one of the 7 wonders of the world. I mean, it's amazing.
So, folks, here's what we're going to do. There will be a link that you will be able to donate. Hey, as a heads up, folks, when you donate $100 or more, Kelly is going to ride a mule. Do I have that right? I'm sorry. I might have read that wrong. What are we doing for your $100? What do I get to do?
So we'll give you that link to my fundraising page. And what I've been doing actually is for folks that donate $100 or more, I will send you a postcard from the bottom of the Grand Canyon that gets carried out by mules. I don't get carried out by a mule, although at that particular moment,
I knew that. I just thought it was fun.
Although it doesn't sound like a horrible idea when you're 40 miles into this thing.
Dude, I'd be riding. I'll ride whatever is there, including a car. But brother, we'll make certain the link is there. 2 more questions. Which is number one, that you've obviously are honoring your commitment to help people in any way that you can. But to you, what do you see for yourself in like long range plans? I mean, are great and tough, but what do you see for yourself in terms of the way that you'd like to help people?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I want to do is, well, I guess there's 2-part answer to this. One is on an individual basis. I love chatting with people. I love hearing their stories. Especially if they have one of their version of my story, whatever they're struggling to get through, or maybe they have gotten through and now they're on the other side, or whatever it might be. And I love connecting with people. So, I mean, if we'll have my email up there, my Instagram up there, for folks. And if you want to connect, we can. I'd love to hear from you.
So we'll do email, Instagram, the Facebook page, I'm guessing, and all that stuff, right? Do they all work? Terrific.
We'll get that up there.
who influences you right now, including Jamie?
Oh boy. Well, Jamie would be number one on that list.
Hold
I
the
think-
thought. Hold the thought for a second. What would you say about Jamie right now? What is it about Jamie that influences you?
Oh my gosh.
2022 version.
Sure. It is the way that she loves me. It's amazing. And especially for someone, there was a long period of my life where I didn't deserve that. I mean, I could tell you stories upon stories, all the crap that I pulled and crap that I did. And she knows it, and she's heard about it, and and she loves me anyway. And she makes, and this is going to sound a little cliche, she makes me want to be a better man, truly. And I want to do it for her. I want to do it for me. I want to do it for my donor's family and my donor, themselves. She makes me want to be a better version.
And you said there's a couple of ways before. Sure. Yeah. I jumped away from the influence, but you said there's a couple of ways. I love to communicate and connect with people one-on-one. Was there another way?
Sure. And I think, and on a broader sense, I think one of the messages that I talk about is that having gone through, my deathbed and being right there, is that I want to convey to people that there is great life on the other side of whatever struggle's right in front of you. I promise it's good stuff. And you may not be able to see it when you're in the thick of it. That old adage, the forest for the trees. But I promise, when you work and struggle and fight and claw your way through whatever's right in front of you, on the other side of that, if you allow it, if you welcome it, there's good stuff. There's better stuff than you possibly could have imagined.
I love the way that you influence other people. We obviously, so who influences you now?
You asked me that the first time. I didn't have a good answer. I know who it's. Honestly, it's going to be besides Jamie, obviously.
Yep.
It is my two brothers.
Love.
It's my dad. We lost my mom about 2.5 years ago. So one of the things that I use for my brothers, my sister, my mom, my dad, Jamie, one of the things that is kind of a guiding light for me is, what I'm about to do, will it make them proud? And if it does, well, then shoot, let's go for it. My sister is one, her and I are extremely close, and I love being able to call and talk to her about upcoming events and upcoming things, and whether it's races or community service event or whatever it is, being able to talk stuff up, because those how many people do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people.
Right.
They quite
literally
are my biggest fans, and it's fantastic. And it's amazing the things you can accomplish when people are rooting for you.
Well, I would end that with the fact you give people a lot of good reasons to root for you. Kelly Thrush, first off, I hope you would be willing to come back. I feel like we barely scratched the surface, man. And it was a ton. You make me happy. And I feel like I said, thanks to Charlie, thanks to all those people, I now know you, and I get to call you a friend.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for showing up.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I am super glad that you and I got to connect
me too.
There in Maryland. By happenstance, that just sort of was, and the amount of hours that we got to struggle through, and you glossed over it just a little bit ago, talking about that weekend. I mean, you put up a marathon that day. I mean, you got 26 and change miles out. That's nothing to slouch at, man. That's a big deal. So congratulations.
Thank you. You, Charlie, Luke, and you could just rattle off 100. Like, people fed into the energy. Fed into that connection that you talked about before, that unbelievable connection. And then the push doesn't feel like ominous. It doesn't feel hard. You're willing to accept the push, and then everybody just does more. And I'll never forget, not just that through that whole weekend, but I'll never forget the finish.
Sure.
Right? So we're sitting there on some lawn. And I'm like, I'm not certain if I'm going to physically get up at this ever, let alone if to finish the race. But we are all going to finish the race at our end of hour 30. And honest to God, Kelly, you literally picked me up. And I remember that. And I remember the getting in felt so easy and true and right. And that's because of people like you specifically, not people like you specifically, and that crew of people around us that just carried us. Honest to God, my best takeaway from all of this so far, including today, is that sense that you are clearly willing to help people. And when we do, like ridiculous, amazing things happen. People are clocking marathons. People are running 30s. People are climbing up and down the Grand Canyon and finding ways to make it harder. Right. God love you, man. I'm thrilled. Kelly Thrush, thank you for making time for all of us today. I am over the moon grateful. And folks, this is John Duffin from Duffin Media. I am thrilled you joined us again for another episode of Your Message Received. Again, keep listening, liking, sharing. iHeartMedia, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Keep liking, keep watching, keep telling all your friends, and we will be back for more. Again, have a great day. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.
And now, making its way across the finish line, Your Message Received has been a production of Duffin Media.